of broadband grants starting in 2019. So if you go to the, actually, I'm going to have you, Mr. Lingrick, I'm going to have you skip to the 6th page. Sorry. And we'll come back to, so if you look here, these are the grants that we've received in each year, either through, and you'll notice that the telephone cooperatives have been exceptionally busy and applying for a lot of grants. I don't know if everyone knows this, but Richland Grant Telephone and Laval Telephone are actually run by the same person. And they have been incredibly busy writing grants. So I sort of highlighted, whenever they write these grants, they have to say how many businesses and homes will be impacted. And so if you look at the bottom of that, there's they've run broadband or are in the process of running broadband past 72 businesses and 1,260 residential locations. So to say that we have not been putting broadband has not been expanding in our county is not an accurate statement. It actually has been. They've been working very hard to do that. So if you will back up to the page right before it, this is for the 2021 grant awards, these are the areas that are going to be impacted. These are the service areas. So the map that's right before this one is where the physical lines are going to be, but then when they run those lines, bigger areas are impacted, more homes are impacted. So this is the most accurate map because it shows what areas are actually going to get service from those lines. So you can see they're working their way up quite a ways. There's this, and this is just the 2021. So one of the things that's really difficult about broadband and knowing where broadband is that the companies doing this work tend to be a little close to the vest about where they're putting things. This map was created by Southwest Regional Planning Commission, and they were able to figure this out by reading the grant and by looking at where these companies have applied for permits to bury fiber in the ground. It isn't as easy as just calling up Richland Grant or Laval and saying, hey, can you give me a map of where you're laying fiber? Because I'm not quite understanding exactly what the issue is, but I think it has to do with proprietary and not, competition and not wanting competition to necessarily know what you're up to. So unfortunately, that makes it a little more difficult for us as a county to know the status of what we actually have in this county. So if you go to the next page, so go to page 7, I think it is, after this. So here, no, go back one. So this just talks about the money. So this is the dollar values that we've been awarded, that the county, these entities within the county have been awarded, and they also had to do the match. So if you look at all of those numbers, it comes up with $7.6 million has been spent on broadband since 2019. So I would say that's a very, very significant investment in broadband in our county by these service providers. And you'll notice they are almost all co-ops, and even TechCom. TechCom is also a part of the Laval and Richland Grant Telephone Co-op. So essentially, other than the Reedsburg Utility Commission, the rest of them were completed by the wonderful and amazing folks at Richland Grant Telephone, Laval Telephone Co-ops.
Mr. Chairman.
Supervisor Luck, do you want to take questions throughout, or would you like to?
Throughout is fine. That's
okay,
fine.
go ahead,
Go ahead.
Supervisor Seat.
Yes, this is an excellent report and excellent research on your part, Melissa. I would comment that with regard to territorial or turfdom, you as you indicated, these are all public utilities. The co-ops are the REA co-ops are public utilities. The Laval Telephone is an affiliate of the Rural Electrification Administration cooperative system. So they have kind of what is called territorial integrity. Years ago, when the REA lines, the electrical lines were put in, territory was established for the various utilities, some public and some private, there was a lot of turf fighting at the time. So when you see the installation of these broadband lines, fiber optic lines, you'll see that there's a relationship between them and where REA has lines within their territory rather than some of their competitors. The Richland REA, the Richland Co-op, or the Richland Telephone Company are all affiliated with the National Rural Electrification Administration. And that's why we are benefiting from this, because they are public utilities, and I'm very happy to see this report. I would like to see a précis or a summary of this report put out as a news release. Melissa, perhaps you and Mr. Landgraf could combine your intellects and put together a very nice summary of this. I'm very certain that the local paper would be very happy to publish it. It's very valuable information. And what does it do? It answers those questions that people are asking you. So very good, and I commend you, Melissa, for this. As usual, your contribution is excellent.
Thanks, Don. All right, so let's keep going here. On page number 8, if you would go to page number 8, Minister Langgraf. So I wanted to show you this because according to the FCC, this is the state of broadband in Richland County. So the purple and the blue is good. The orange is not good. So keep this map in mind as we move forward. So this is what, so you see that and you'll see that the lines that Richland Grant or Laval Telephone Co-op is working on does actually cover quite a bit of the territory that is within the orange right now. If you go to the next slide. So this, I just clicked on my house because I happen to know what kind of internet I have at my house. And so when you click on an address, it will tell you, so it says I have a 15 megabytes download and 1 megabyte up. And so then if you click to the next slide, I just want to show you how inaccurate the FCC slides are. That's my actual. I have an 80 download and a 57. And according to that map, I have 15 and 1. So, and this is true. This is the opposite is also true. There are areas where it thinks that there's internet and there's actually not. So these maps, as great as I think their intent was, they're not actually very informative about what is actually available to people in that physical location. So this next one, this one talks about, this is called unserved areas. So in the red is all areas where they think there's absolutely no internet. And then if you go to the next map, this is where they think it's underserved. So their definition of underserved is when you only have one choice. So for me, I do only have one. Well, the satellite is probably a choice for many people, but my understanding with satellite is it's very expensive and not very good. So essentially for me, I consider myself to have one option. So you can see that for most of Richland County, there's only one option. Unless you live in the city of Richland Center or have no internet at all, there's only one option. And then the next map that I think is really important, because a lot of people will say, well, I just can use my phone, right? I can use data on my phone. But all of these little dark gray spots, which happens to be where I live, and many other places in this county, there's no cell service either. So I still have a landline because there's absolutely no cell service at all. And everyone who comes to our house is always shocked by that, that there's no cell service. I'm like, we have fiber internet, but we don't have cell service. So I think it's important to realize that there are still many places in this county where not only is there not internet options as far as fiber or cable or anything like that, but there's also no cell service, so people can't even just use their phones. So think about children in school, we're trying to go virtual, businesses, people trying to have, stay work from home. There's just clearly we have some issues, and we're not even with looking at those FCC maps, which appear to be wonderful, are really not very accurately portraying what's happening in Richland County. So the reason I'm bringing this to you today, one of the reasons is one, just to let you know that there is broadband fiber being put in the ground in Richland County. The co-ops are investing millions of dollars, $7.6 million in our county. So, you know, they're working and they're working as fast as they can. But one of the things I think that we need for many reasons, one of which is we need to know what's actually available to the citizens of Richland County, where our issues really are. And the reason that would help, it would help us know where to focus our efforts. It would help the providers know where to focus their efforts. And so I'm proposing that we do something similar to what Iowa County did, which was they sent out a survey to all the households. And I'm proposing that we send out, I went to the Census Bureau and found out there were 7,538 households. But then there's 2,032 households in Richland Center, and there are multiple options for broadband in Richland Center. I don't think it's useful or helpful necessarily unless people really want to. I just didn't think it was useful to send surveys to Richland Center, but if we sent them just to the households that are outside of Richland Center, you know, we could send postcards which give them a link. And before you ask, how can they go to a link if they don't have internet? On the postcard, it would say, if you can't get internet, you know, you can go to the library, you can go, there's free Wi-Fi and we could list where there's Wi-Fi that they could use, or they just have a phone number where they can call and we'll then mail them the survey. That way we wouldn't be mailing a 6-page survey, 6 double-sided survey to every household, or we can mail it to everyone and it comes to about $3,028. The 2 links there are just links to the Southwest Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission map that I showed you, so you can get more information, and then the Public Service Commission maps. That's just a link for that. So we did have a cover sheet for this one. Oh, yeah, so I did include the survey. I don't think we need to go through the whole survey. I think you should just read through it to look at what questions were asked. But I think that for a very small investment on the county's behalf, we could gain a lot of valuable information that we could use for many things, but mostly to probably focus our efforts on where there's absolutely no internet, and then we can start talking with the providers and putting the pressure onto the providers to really focus on those areas as well. So I think this information will, because they don't have any information other than those public service maps too. That's what they're working off of as well. So, so I'm proposing that we do a survey. The survey at Iowa County was handled through their extension, which I think we talked to Mr. Cooey about extension potentially being involved, and I believe Chelsea indicated that she was interested. So I'm proposing that we perhaps send this to Ag and Extension to look at creating a survey, how we would you know, distribute it. And then I believe that I talked with Troy Maggie from Southwest Regional Planning Commission, and I believe there may be some monies from the federal, the latest COVID rescue plan, but also he thought there might be some economic development money that could potentially help us pay for the survey. And they're definitely willing to help us with looking at the data and getting it all put together as well. So I would make a motion that we refer this to Ag and Extension to determine, unless we don't want to do a survey. Maybe I should wait until we hear from other people.
That's okay. Let's talk about it. We can talk about survey motion.
Okay, so I would make a motion to refer to Ag and Extension that they create a survey and determine funding sources for that survey.
I will second that survey, that motion.
Okay, second. So motion by Luck, a second by Seep. So let's open it up to discussion and questions for Supervisor Luck. Supervisor Jensis, go ahead.
Oh, I'm all in favor of the survey, and even making it, even if you mail it, whatever, to make it the easiest for everybody to do, because there'll be some people who will have a hard time with it on internet if they don't have it. I want to know, does the survey also ask about cell phone?
Yeah,
Okay,
yes,
good.
it does. Yep.
Good.
It asks people specifically, do you use internet from your phone? And it explains the difference. It did a good job of explaining the
I
difference.
didn't read it all, so
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it does a really good job of pulling out all those little fine details. We may want to add some of our own questions, but I think we can leave that up to Chelsea and whoever decides to
I
determine.
think this is great.
Okay, I've got a couple tiny comments and questions. So one comment I have is that I know that Vernon Communications Cooperative is laying fiber in Richland County as well, because we own property in Yuba, and I just got the notice that they're laying it this summer.
So they
You
must
are-
not have gotten a grant to do it. They must just be doing it.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Uh,
See, this is exactly the point. We
Okay,
have no
so
idea.
yeah, I just wanted
Yep.
to mention that,
Yep.
that it wasn't on the map, but that they're doing some work here in the county.
Well,
I was
Mr. Chairman,
wondering-
your REA line is probably with Vernon Electric, and therefore that's their territory. They probably have federal money for that.
That's incorrect. Our
Oh.
electric is Richland Electric Cooperative in Yuba.
Vernon Electric?
No, Richland Electric
Oh,
Cooperative.
maybe they have a contract
So-
with Richland.
They don't overlap for some reason. There's a difference there.
Uh,
So one question I had was the cost that you generated, was that just for postage?
Just for
It wasn't for
postage.
printing or,
Nope,
okay.
just for I was just trying to figure out like how much it would talk to actually send them
I
out.
thought that's what you meant. I just
It
wanted
is,
to make
yep.
that clear. And then my third question, or my third thing was, did Iowa County have a report that they published, and
They
and
do.
have we
Uh,
seen that?
I have seen it. I have not. I didn't include it with this, but I can certainly do that.
That might be interesting.
Yeah,
when-
yeah, they summarized everything beautifully. It looks, it's very interesting, and I think it
Okay.
was really helpful.
So maybe when it go, assuming the committee approves referring this, maybe the UW Extension Committee could take a look at that report to see what the end result would look like. And that way we could think about, are we asking the right questions?
Right. To be
Yeah,
honest, I
that
wasn't sure if Iowa County wanted us to be putting it out there.
Okay, okay.
Because I didn't
Okay.
ask if I could just put it out on our website as, hey, read this. This is what they did. So I didn't do. That's why I didn't do
Okay,
it.
so we could ask though. And
We
see
can
if they
ask.
can
Yep, I
publish.
just didn't.
Okay, thank you. That's all,
Miss-
that's all I had. Yep. Supervisor
Mr.
Beal,
Chairman
go
and
ahead.
Melissa,
Yes.
when the three of us were down at Iowa County last March, they talked about, and I won't have the terminology correct, but like a main line that the county was sponsoring on the Highway 151 corridor, I believe. Is that correct? Is that the spinoff for all of their broadband?
I do remember them talking about that.
Yeah.
Again, I think that we wouldn't even know where to put such a thing until we have better information about what we have where.
Thank you.
And they did the survey last fall, so they must have had questions as well as to where things are and where they should be investing, because they did it in November. I assume, when you read the report, they did it because of all the kids, virtual school, and there was a lot of complaints about not having the ability to work from home and attend school, so, which everyone is struggling with, so.
Okay, so sounds like we've got a little bit of silence here, so maybe we could go ahead and take a vote on this, and one suggestion I'd have is that assuming this keeps going forward, that maybe a news release be looked at as part of a survey release, and
I was
maybe
just gonna ask.
some of
yeah.
that information in the news release could mention that we already have a lot of projects going on, but we're trying to ascertain the
Exactly
state
where
of
we
things
stand.
currently, so could kind of kill two
Combine the
birds with
two?
one stone,
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking that I could write up more of the verbal, because this report did not have a lot of text to it because I didn't have time, but I could write up everything that we just talked about, and then we could put this document with the text in it on the website for people to start informing themselves as well.
Yeah, and I'd put it in the paper too.
But like he said, we could combine it with announcing the survey, and then that would get us some momentum with the survey, I think.
Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, Melissa?
Yes.
is
Yep, go
I
ahead,
do
Mr.
think-
Seat.
Oh, sorry, I'm not supposed to do that.
Oh,
Thank
it's
you.
okay. Doesn't matter.
I do think it would be very good to have at least a short news release, sufficient enough to let the public know that this survey is coming out and what it's about. I think that would be helpful to get a response to your survey as well.
Right.
Yeah, and we can see what
That's only a suggestion, and I'm not making a motion.
yep, and we might be jumping a little ahead here because it's still got to get to the UW Extension Committee, and
Yes.
that committee would have to approve it, and staff would have to be on board and all that. So it sounds like there's some interest, but I think we need some more discussion before we get to the news release stage. But it sounds like it might be heading in that direction. Yep, Mr. Glassburner, go ahead. Jason
Yeah,
Glassburner.
two things. One is, I know, Melissa, you said you spoke with Southwest Regional Planning. I believe they had submitted surveys at different places in the counties they serve. Is that a possibility to use their survey? And then the second question or point is that I do have funds inside of economic development that we may be able to use to help offset the cost.
You want me to answer that?
Do you?
Yeah, so I'm not sure about Southwest Regional Planning having, I don't remember Troy mentioning them sending out surveys specifically about broadband to their counties.
That's what I had understood. We've been working on it as well in Prosperity Southwest, I believe, if I'm recalling correctly.
Okay, well, I'll obviously I can talk to Troy and clarify all of that. And I can send all the information I have to you to distribute to Ag and Extension. Okay.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote on this. So all those in favor of referring this to UW Ag and Extension Committee, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion is approved. So this issue will be going to Ag and Extension. So thank you, Supervisor Luck. Agenda item number 8, a meeting with Moody's. So this item was postponed from the last meeting. There was a suggestion from the committee, and I believe we made a recommendation to postpone it until a conversation happened with Carol Worth from Wisconsin Public Finance Professionals. And the idea was that I was recommending last time was to schedule a meeting with Moody's Investor Services to discuss our bond rating and our interest in getting an improved bond rating. And I contacted Ms. Worth last week. I asked her what she thought of the idea, and she thought it would be a good idea to wait until we had 2 years worth of audited budgets to present to Moody's. So that would be budget calendar years 2019 and 2020. At the last meeting with Moody's, the 2019 audited budget was not available. So that would be 2 years worth. They're typically completed in the fall for the previous year's budget. So this, if the committee is amenable to this motion, it would be to schedule a meeting between this committee and Moody's after the 2020 budget year audit has been complete. So that's the motion I'm going to make right now, today.
I'll second that motion, and I have a question.
Okay, so a motion by myself and a second by Luck, and go ahead, Supervisor Luck.
So that's assuming that the 2020 audit shows we're doing well, that our general fund amount has gone up, right? I mean, because if it's gone down or something, then that would not do us any good to talk to them, would it?
Probably not. And yes, I would say it would assume that it's going up.
That's improving. Yeah.
And actually, I did discuss that with Carol Worth as well, because I mentioned to her, I showed her the documents that we looked at last time, the cash balance history and tax base, and then our debt load. And we discussed the difference between the history and the general fund balance, and how we get a monthly report of cash balance history from Treasurer Keller, but we only get an annual report on our general fund balance from Johnson Block and Company, and that's our auditor. And she suggested, and this isn't in my motion, but I did put it in the cover sheet for folks to see. She suggested that we set up a meeting. I don't know if it needs to be the whole committee, but probably the committee needs to hear the results of it, but a meeting with Treasurer Keller, Administrator Langrek, and Johnson Block and Company, our auditor, to figure out what is it that Treasurer Keller is putting in her cash balance history that the auditor is not putting in the general fund balance. Try to figure out those differences and see if there's a way we can start to generate that general fund balance on a monthly basis. So our committee and the whole county board can be aware of where we're at mid-year, and we're not always just looking 8 months into the past after our audit gets published. So I just want to mention that that she had a suggestion for how we could get ourselves more educated, and that might lead us to whether or not we want to have that meeting as well, that new information. So,
Mr. Chairman.
Yep, go ahead, Mr. C.
I agree that we should be very deliberative and thoughtful before and confident in our information before we have a conversation, if need be, with Moody's. I am somewhat skeptical about Moody's, but somewhat like Mr. Brewer, I think we should be careful not to poke the bear.
And to the point about being prepared and having our information ready.
Yeah, let's be.
Carol
let's be,
Worth,
let's
Worth
be very
prepared the.
before we do that.
Correct. And Ms. Worth brought that up, and she said that she helped Supervisor Brewer and then our former county board chair, Janetta Kirkpatrick, get ready for that meeting with Moody's by preparing a lot of those materials. So she
Okay.
was at those meetings, and she made sure that Richland County was well prepared for the meeting. So it would be assumed that we would do the same thing.
Yes, well,
Here as well.
I think Mr. Brewer is wise that we do not poke the bear till we're ready to poke the bear.
Okay, anyone else?
So
Yep,
what
Supervisor Gentis?
exactly- Your motion's a little vague then with all these other clarifications.
Yeah, so my motion is to schedule a meeting between the committee and Moody's after the 2020 budget year audit has been complete. And someone could make an amendment to that motion if you want to be specific, like don't do the meeting if our general fund balance looks
Well,
bad.
I think
You know,
we should-
we could make it real
I
specific if
think
we
you should
want.
just say after, deciding to do it after we have had a discussion with Carol Worth. Something like that, just to clarify that we maybe, we just want to be sure. Does that make sense?
It does. So let me take that as a motion to amend to add to the end of this sentence. So after the word complete, if we just insert the words after a discussion has been had with Carol Worth. Okay, does anyone want to second that?
I'll
Okay.
second it. I think Mr. Chairman, I'll second that. I think I understand Linda's motion to mean that after a discussion with Carol Worth, the Finance and Personnel Committee will consider the question of whether or not we have a conversation with Moody's. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so we had a motion to amend from Gentis and a second from Cooey. Any further discussion on that motion to amend? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to amend, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion to amend carries. So now we have a recommended, an amended motion that says, recommend a motion to schedule a meeting between this committee and Moody's after the 2020 budget year audit has been complete and after a discussion has been had with Carol Worth. So all those in favor of that amended motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, so that amended motion carries. So thanks everyone. And thanks for the suggestion last time. It was a good conversation with Ms. Worth. So agenda item number 9, a complaint policy, or the item is called complaint policy distribution. So at our last meeting, Supervisor Cooey, you mentioned at the very end of the meeting, I think your question was something like, and I wrote this all down so we could kind of see it in this cover sheet. I wrote this down this morning. It was something like, how is information distributed to employees? And then you and I had a discussion afterward, and it was specific to the county's complaint policy. I posted where that's at on Mr. Langrick's website, but then I did a little more digging on that employee information page that employees can log into on our home website, and it has a bunch of documents there. And we've got our employee handbook there, but it's an old version from 2 years ago. It has a concerns section, but I believe we've changed that concerns section to talk about the complaint policy. And then it also references a Richland County discipline grievance policy. And that is also listed on the website, but I thinking that now that that may have been replaced by the complaint policy. So I've kind of got it all laid down in the cover sheet. I don't know what we should do here, but just wanted to kind of follow up on his suggestion from last time. Definitely, my opinion, if anyone hears that an employee has a complaint, send them the complaint policy right away so that they're aware. It's already on the website. But the question here is really, how are we proactively distributing it to employees? So did I summarize your concern correctly?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, so Mr. Langrek, what do you, we have a big, I should say too, we have a really big backlog of issues. We have information that has not been updated in probably a year or two. The employee handbook is a really good example. So we had the county board passing policy changes, but then we had things not being updated. The procedure, I believe, for who's responsible sort of fell apart in the past couple of years. It wasn't just with your arrival, Mr. Langrek, it was pre that, and then it continued after that. So I read through one of the job descriptions that the Administrative Transition Committee considered, looked at from the clerk's office, and I believe it was the accounts payable specialist had some responsibility about updating documents and getting those shared out, but that stopped happening. And so I think the issue here might be is that we don't know who is responsible. I don't think anyone's been assigned. I don't necessarily think it should be Mr. Langrek because he's got enough on his plate, but I think we just need someone assigned to make employee handbook changes. And I think that would kind of cover this complaint policy. I think the complaint policy is really part of the employee handbook. Is that right, Mr. Langrek?
It's kind of designed as a standalone policy, but it's all in that realm of different personnel policies.
So in the concern section in the employee handbook, do we refer to the complaint policy? Is it?
That is the intent. The intent is to move some of the employee handbook individual pieces out to standalone types of policies and keep them all HTML based versus Word document based. That way, when we're amending the policies, it's you're not trying to keep up with a table of contents and other things that kind of go along with an employee handbook.
So do you know if we changed the employee handbook to reference the complaint policy? Did the county board do that, this committee and the county board?
It sounds familiar. I'd have to reference back to the resolution where we adopted the complaint policy.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
It's not necessarily just a complaint policy. It's how do you get the employees of Richland County to understand anything we update? So, of course, where I'm at, we post everything. And yes, it's online, and yes, but there's a specific place in the plant where anytime anything's changed, it's posted for minimum 30 days. So that is more my thought is, okay, define a place in each building that's county operated. And whenever we have a policy change or we have an update or whatever the case may be, we get this stuff out and get it posted. It could be each building, it could be a director of each department, whatever the building is, and making sure that it's out there. The last thing you want is the employees to think that stuff's being done and they're not being made aware of it. That's all it's for more than anything. You may never have any other use in that. They may look at it and say, well, I don't care if they change that or not. That's not the point. The point is that you're putting the information out in front of all the employees so that they are aware, or they understand that they can go to a place and see what they need quick, not have to go through and click on this web page to go to this web page to refer to this. People don't want that, is what I would suggest.
Okay, so I think maybe this is something that we know it's a problem. I'm not quite sure how it's going to be fixed right away, but we're aware of it. We passed the complaint policy 3 months ago, February 17th, by the way. So this isn't really stale, it's a fairly fresh policy. So anything else we need to discuss, or should we move on? It's out there. think we'll figure something out eventually. We'll figure out where it falls in the priority list of all our priorities, but
Mr. Chair, I
Yep.
think it's still in that job description that we passed for the accounts payable specialist, isn't it, Mr. Langrick? I'm pretty sure it was still in there. It's one line that says we'll update employee handbook and some other committee documents or
county
some
board rules.
county board rules,
Yep.
something, yeah.
Yep. Okay, so that position is vacant right now, so
Yeah.
maybe we can follow up with Clerk Kalish after the meeting and just find out if, just make sure he's aware of it. He might not be aware of it, so.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, thanks for that suggestion and thanks for bringing that forward, Supervisor Cooey. Agenda item number 10. Under the budget section now, departmental template and timeline for 2022 operational budget. Mr. Langreck.
1 minute, Mr. Chair. Let me pull up my document here. Mr. Chair, looking today for 2 possible motions. First motion to adopt proposed tentative 2022 operational budget review timeline and to begin scheduling departments for presentation with the Administrator and Finance and Personnel Committee. Second possible motion today, looking to adopt template summary items to include in the 2022 budget review summary template. The first item with the timeline and efforts to begin coordinating our meeting times for the 2022 department budget presentations. A proposed timeline has been drafted for consideration. I'm looking to Finance and Personnel Committee members' availability to schedule the meeting and to allow for budget presentations. The proposed timeline was put into your folders late. It did not arrive there until this morning. It looks like similar to what we had done last year, but it takes out, as we discussed, kind of the administrator review and boils it down into a 3-phase kind of a budget review process. The first preliminary budget phase kind of staying the same as last year. We'd be looking in the first week of July to release out our guidance and package to the department so that they understand what the criterias are for increases or staying the same or decreases in overall budgets and whether that's in regards to expenditures versus levies. We then have distribution of copies to the departments. We have an administrator conducts department head meeting to kind of to affirm what the expectations are as we approach in submitting the preliminary budgets. Departments then work through their extensive worksheets with all their many line items to come up with a budget that complies with the guidance set forth. We then have on August 20th, then we would have a preliminary presentation to you folks as a preliminary budget, which would kind of show where we're at in gauging our over or under, and then it also then would calculate in what we're expecting for a net construction increase, etc. So that'd be our first benchmark. We would have a preliminary budget to present to you folks. Now we would get into the phase 2, the department reviews of the Administrator and Finance and Personnel Committee. This would be looking to execute this in the timeline of August 23rd through September 1st. The dates of availabilities, I'm looking at availabilities that you might have the 23rd through the 27th, and then a second week on the 30th through the 1st to meet with each department. The appropriate time of meeting with the departments is going to come down to the availability that you folks might have and kind of setting up those dates. I'm envisioning that if we get to a point with the summary sheet of allotting perhaps like 15 minutes for smaller, more condensed kind of operations and 30 minutes, possibly more for our bigger operations so that we can kind of sift through their information and understand how their 2022 budget is going to impact operations and allow you folks questions to understand that. So that's kind of the big decision point. What I'm trying to fill in today with you folks is going to be what type of availability do you have to schedule departments for that review. Following that then, September 7th, we will have County Administrator will discuss budget adjustments with you folks, and we potentially would have callbacks then if there's departments that you'd want to bring back in as needed to discuss with. We hit the finalization then on September 17th. The mindset then is based on conversations that we have. As we had talked about, our preliminary budget with our guidance is going to say come back with solutions to make your operations best fit underneath this type of a ceiling or underneath inside of these types of parameters. If it all doesn't fit, please include in your summary what's going to have to be reduced, what's going to have to be potentially cut out, what potentially you're going to have to collaborate with other types of departments or find other funding sources or some types of creative solutions. And then if there's recommendations to incorporate those back into a budget, that becomes a collective decision between us folks and what that would cost. So when we hit the September 7th meeting, I'm anticipating that it would be appropriate to invite that then as a special county board meeting as well, to have the county board in attendance so you can have direct feedback from your county board members as you did last time. But then when we hit the September 17th, then that becomes kind of the finalized product that we would be distributing out to the media and out to the papers for publishing, in anticipation then of an approved budget at the end of October. Questions or concerns with the proposed timeline? And then, Mr. Chair, looking for guidance that you might have on the times and dates of availabilities. I guess before we get into that discussion, perhaps I'll show you what I'm envisioning for discussion points. So I don't have a drafted template. I would like to get your feedback on what the items are that we'd be looking for before we kind of cobble and draft together what an overlay would be. Again, envisioning something that kind of looked like the same type of summary sheets that we reviewed for the capital improvement, capital projects planning. The elements that I'm proposing that we incorporate into the department review would be the department or program description and summary of a general functions and services provided to the community. Number 2, the mandated functions and services provided by state statute or federal code, the non-mandated services and functions provided by department or program, listing of the funds, essentially the fund numbers that the department or program are assigned in the county budget, the major goals and projects intended with the 2022 budget appropriation, the summary of the impacts from the 2022 budget guidelines, essentially how it impacted your operations underneath the guidance that's released, department and service staffing adjustments in response to that guidance, a list of reduced or eliminated services, list of expanded or added services, collaborative, outsourced, or creative solutions to maintain those services, cost impacts to restore services to 2021 levels, and recommendations from departments, and potentially then any recommendations by supervisory committees, and then finally, future operational changes needed, state federal mandates or request for consideration. And this last one is kind of intended to capture situations like we know eventually we're going to have to move into a bit different jail. We should always be keeping in mind that with that we might have to increase 8 to 9 full-time employees when we cross that bridge. Other different mandates or other different regulations might be changing as well to keep those on the future horizon. So that is what I have for you today, Mr. Chair. Again, looking for a motion to adopt the timeline, looking for availability that you folks might have to complete that timeline, and then looking to see if you have any other items that you'd be looking for in that summary of the budget for your discussion. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so maybe let's handle this in the order that Mr. Langreck is recommended. So he's got a recommended motion to adopt the proposed 2022 operational budget review timeline. So looking for a motion
Make
there.
a motion.
Motion by Cooey,
I'll second.
second by Luck. So
Discussion.
thoughts? Yep, go ahead, Mr. Seat.
Mr. Langreck, back in the beginning and the steps in the process, we had discussed, I think, at a previous meeting that the budget would be reviewed by the oversight committee before it proceeded along those lines. I don't see that defined in the steps in the process.
Mr. Chair, I believe you're correct. I don't think I have it deliberately defined. I think I just have it inferred through the question. So I can certainly make that amendment in there. I would visualize having it fall into place between having the budget submitted to the administration office and having them come back out And then the meeting between finance and personnel on the September 7th. So between September 7th and the distribution of items on August 20th would be kind of the time frame there. I'm not sure if all committees meet in between those 2 weeks. What also might be appropriate is to have department heads as early back in July, when our guidance is out, as they have meetings saying, this is what my preliminary budget is shaping up to, could be a solution to this, Mr. Chair.
So,
I go ahead, Mr. Seat. Yeah.
yes, so you enumerated the steps in the beginning and you dated them. What number are you giving this oversight review and recommendation to? Number 2, number 1A, or you want to think about that?
Supervisor Seat, if you don't mind if I jump in, I heard some dates and I got a little confused about dates and I started looking at those. So I think
Mr.
you were
Chair,
talking about phase 1, Mr. Langrick. Is that right? Somewhere in there in July and August? Is that where you're talking about supervisory committees reviewing?
Yes, I think it would have to be kind of a stretch over several of essentially from when the preliminary budgets are built to when we're making kind of the final input from the county board between you, with you folks, to try to boil it down into an actual step that's going to end up being a 4-week step in the process. Then if we're going to, without doing a special type of a meeting, as our committee and commission and board meetings stretch over at least 3 weeks, if not longer. So it's something I can incorporate in here to say departments can start presenting preliminary budgets to their supervisory committee, and then we'll again, as kind of in our summary sheet of looking for feedback from the supervisory committee, we'll have it a little bit more defined out here in the timeline.
Very good. I don't want anything to go out of the department without committee review and some sort of input.
So to me, it looks like on July 7th, if you're, Mr. Langrick, distributing copies of the packet to departments, then the departments are supposed to submit their completed budgets August 6th. So there's a approximately 30-day window there. So the committees and boards and commissions that oversee each department or have involvement with those departments, they would have to review the departmental budget there. And I wonder how that works with the calendar that I know you've been keeping track of all those committees, commissions, and boards. And I wonder if maybe a few of those dates might need to be adjusted so that.
Well,
those
Mr. Chairman,
Yep.
if
Go ahead.
necessary, a committee, because we're dealing with the importance of the budget, could have a special meeting if the timing wasn't right otherwise, for the purpose of just budget discussion.
That's true. Yeah, Mr. Langrick, do you have thoughts on that?
Well, I'll get it included here at the front end of essentially once we kind of get the documents out, as soon as the departments have their budgets built, to be scheduling them into their meetings to talk about their oversight committee. And then we'll have, again, the feedback will come to you folks then when you're reviewing. Because we're reviewing the preliminary budgets here at the front part of August, that kind of leaves the end of July. And even if they didn't get reviewed by that point, there would still be then the final inputs then by the individual members for your folks on September 7th. So if there were any of the supervisory committees that didn't get to meet, there would still be an opportunity for feedback through that meeting as well.
Okay, comments from other folks on the timeline?
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
just a
go ahead.
question. Clint, do they have a number that you're gonna give them that they have to work to?
We're gonna arrive in early July at essentially saying how much levy increase you can have, if any, or how many expenditure increase you're gonna have, if any, is kind of where things are lining up right now.
Okay, just so otherwise they just go, well, this is what my budget is, and then we go back and forth for 2 months because well, it's not gonna work, so then you gotta cut it back, you know what I mean? So if
Right.
they have a number to work to, then they can go through, I mean, my vision would be that, okay, we can work to this number. Now, we come up with what we have to do to meet that number with these things that have to happen.
Yep.
That's kind of the thought process.
Yes, the budget documents, Supervisor Couey, that are going to come out are going to show the 2020 numbers. And then if it stayed the same, if it's a percentage increase, percentage decrease, we'd be able to gauge it off of there in the column right next to it when they're filling out their worksheets.
And this committee will be approving that, whatever that guidance is. You'll be bringing a recommendation forward and we'll be approving it and then it will go out. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Like last year, we'll have a guidance document that'll be released out.
Mr. Chair.
Yep, go ahead.
So in this timeline, I just wanted to peek at those dates in August. You want us for all of those dates in August, or what are you asking?
I'm
Like,
looking, we have essentially 20 departments then that are going to come and want to petition and show the budgets. So I guess I'm looking to see how much availability that you might have so that I know what dates we can mark off. So I know then how much I can appropriate for each department. Like I said, I think optimally if we had 15 minutes for a smaller department and at least 30 minutes for a large department at a minimum, I think would be great. But trying to fit and gauge that really comes down to what you folks might have for availability. I certainly appreciate that everybody has very, very busy schedules. So looking to see what dates you might be available and how many hours in those dates that you might have available. And then we'll try to appropriate the best we can. If things get terrifically tight, then it might be a lot more summary sheets at the front end and just having kind of a face-to-face on, is there any questions or things that the department heads adamantly want to point on?
Right? So you have
Yep.
8 dates here. I'm not saying that we don't need all those dates, but previously, before last year, the year before, we met on 4 Fridays and we covered everybody in those 4 Fridays, if I'm correct, if Don remembers that. So I don't know if we need 8 dates.
I'm very much opening Supervisor Gentles. We don't need 8 days. I'm just having them on here as options right now,
Okay.
as proposed options.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I mean, I liked how we did it I don't remember exactly how we did it last year, but I don't remember it being 8 days in a row. I certainly could do more like once a week or something, would be easier to accommodate than several days in a row. Do we want to figure out the schedule outside this meeting and approve the rest of the timeline?
The only comment I'd make is, could we get it all done in one day if we just
Oh,
pick
that's
one
true.
day and just,
Just
because
hammered
it's
it out.
much easier to manage a schedule, if I
Yes.
just take a day and say, okay, this
I
month
agree.
I'll
That's
take
true.
the day off from work and just get it done. I mean, I don't know how it works for everybody else, but.
I could do that.
Well, so I figured out really quickly, if we use that rough guidance that Mr. Langrick gave us of 30 minutes for large departments, I just said we had 4 large ones, and then 15 minutes for smaller departments. I believe that gets us to 6 hours, nonstop without breaks. And I'm imagining that because departments are going to have some information presented in a template format ahead of time, we'll be able to review those ahead of time and then think of questions to ask the department heads. We're not going to necessarily listen to every department head read their whole template to us, but they might want to highlight a few things and then we could jump into discussion and questions for each department. So to me, 1 day's worth all day, that would work well for me too. If we
Me
can
too.
figure out how to get them all done in 1 day, just set it, block the room off and the whole day for it
And we bring our own lunch.
with a lunch hour
Yeah.
preferably.
So we don't have a lot of lost time.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Go ahead, Mr. Seat.
Mr. Chairman, it just seems to me that it would be more efficient if we, if the budget presentation is going to be subject to review and approval by its oversight committee, by the time it comes to this step, it should be much more efficient if we insist on that review and approval by its oversight committee in collaboration with whatever authority.
And that does get back to, if the guidance coming through this timeline is that oversight committee review and approval should come during phase one, it would cut it off before it comes here. And I
Yes,
think Mr. Langrick, you had mentioned before September 7th, but I think what Mr. Seep is saying is something a little different. I think he's saying by August 23rd or whatever date we have set aside for departmental budget reviews, that oversight committee approval should have happened before it comes to this committee is what he's suggesting, I think.
That sounds, and we can accommodate for that. I guess what's going to happen and how I envision, unfortunately, is it's going to be the departments are going to come before you and say, underneath the guidance that yourself and your administrator have released to you, this is what I'm proposing to cut or to reduce. I'm going to come and tell you what I'm reducing. Julie is, Barb is. I mean, all the departments are going to come forward and say that. So it's going to be then the hearing thing of, I'd really like you to consider putting this back into my budget so we can provide this service, or we can continue having this person on full staff, or we can do these types of things. So I mean, that's the real conversation that is most likely going to transpire in that day. The input from supervisory committees are going to be good and needed, but they're going to not be at an organizational perspective. They're going to be at a department perspective.
Mr. Chair, my experience with the supervisory committees going through the budget process is there's a lot of head nodding and saying, yep, you need all that, you need all that, without, without having the big picture. And so as much as I agree that the supervisory committees are important, I think many of the discussions are going to have to be had at this committee with the big picture in front of us.
Okay, it's making me think we need to be a little more official about this so we give clear guidance, see where the committee members are at. So I'm gonna go ahead and make, yep, we got to move along here. Mr. Langrick's good about flashing in front of me the time now. So I'm going to go ahead and make a motion to amend the timeline, just so we're all clear what's happening here. So that the departmental budgets be presented on one of the 8 days that are listed within this document under phase 2. So that'd be between August 23rd and September 1st. That's a motion to amend. That I'll make. If someone wants to make a second.
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Gentis. Any discussion on that motion to amend? Okay, all those in favor of consolidating to 1 day, please say aye.
Aye.
all right.
Opposed, say no. Okay, so that motion to amend passes. Now, I think we need potentially another motion to amend, or we need to discuss that motion to amend. Maybe we'll vote it down. I'm not quite sure on how to incorporate oversight committees, boards, and commissions into this process. So does anyone want to take a stab at it?
Wait, can I just say that? They have a whole month from 7/6 to 8/6. They all meet within a month. I don't understand what the problem is. Is that?
Well, I think there's a couple things going on here, Supervisor Gentis. So I think one question is, when are they going to review their department head's budget that they're going to bring to Finance and Personnel Committee? So it's kind of the timing question. But then the other piece of this is, what does the oversight committee, board, or commission's role going to be? Because what Supervisor Lux says is usually they just give a stamp of approval to whatever the department head brings forward. But there have to be some changes at some point along the way. And Mr. Langrick is suggesting that this committee, because we're looking at the whole big picture, that this committee really weigh in on, yes, you brought that budget forward, but was it within the guidelines that this committee and the administrator set forward?
Mr. Chairman.
A couple of issues going, and let's let Supervisor Gentis finish.
I think it's twofold. Maybe they do stamp it, but if the committee knows the parameters, they should be very good with making sure that the department follows those parameters, and they shouldn't pass that they're forwarding that budget forward. So I think we should respect that.
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
I think I agree with Linda, and I understand Ms. Lux's concerns about committee duties. I I would say that maybe it occurs with some committees that they a tendency to use her word, quote, rubber stamp the proposal. But on the committees that I have been on over the years, I have not seen that. We are going to have parameters, and I believe that committees should be given the responsibility, the guidance to have an understanding of what the parameters are, and they should be asked to work within those parameters as much as possible. I just think that we don't want to be overly critical of these committees. No committee wants to have a budget sort of imposed upon them without their input. That's what I'm saying. I think there needs to be a collaborative process. You know, maybe we ought to invite one of the personnel and finance committees who's aware of all the guidance to come to a particular committee meeting to assist that oversight committee in what the budget parameters are. But let's be a little more democratic.
Okay, do you have a suggestion for a motion to amend?
No.
Okay, let me go ahead and make a motion to amend to include oversight committee, commissions, and boards within phase one, to include their review within phase one. And
I
and
do
the-
actually have a suggestion.
okay, yeah, do you want to try it?
Sure. Well, what I'm
Maybe
thinking
it'll
is,
die to lack of a second, and you can
Right.
make a different one. You can do that. It's okay.
so if we met on one of the later dates, like September 1st, that would be, then they would not only have it, the department head would have it in early July, so they potentially could present it to at their July meeting, but they would for sure be able to present it at their August meeting if we didn't meet until the later dates. And they would for sure be able, the department or the oversight committee would absolutely be able to review it in August, because the department head would have a month to have prepared it. So I think we would be fine, and they would absolutely. And just one further clarification, I shouldn't have said rubber stamp. What I mean is, a lot of times the committee would come with, this is the stuff we need, and the committee doesn't want to be the one to say no, and so they pass the buck to finance.
Yep.
So
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and keep with my motion to amend because I think
Yes.
it fits within what you're saying. So, and I'm
I was-
purposely keeping my motion vague so that Mr. Langreck can incorporate it as he we'll see what he brings back to us, because we'll have another chance to take a look at this. So my motion to amend is to include oversight committee, board, or commission review in phase one.
I will second that.
Okay, so a motion by myself and a second by Luck. Any discussion on that motion to amend? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, so twice we've amended, and right now we're voting on a motion to adopt the proposed tentative 2022 operational budget review timeline as amended twice. All those in favor of that motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, we have that adopted now with hopefully some clear guidance for you, Mr. Langreck. So we didn't, just all throw our opinions out there. We got it. The second motion that he's recommending is to adopt a template of summary items to include in that 2022 departmental budget review summary template.
I will make that motion.
Motion by Luck. Second by Cooey. Okay, so discussion on this motion. The only thing I'm thinking would be a nice change. I know in our draft strategic plan, Troy Magid suggested that we include some sort of a question about if you had 20% more, what would you do with it? If you had 20% less than whatever guidance we're giving you, how would you handle that reduction? And I thought that was kind of an interesting question. If maybe it's too soon to include that, but I'm just bringing it up because he brought it up, and I am kind of curious as to how some departments would answer that question. Are are you opposed to including that, or do you think that would be Mr. Langrick?
If it helps with an insight on, what the department views and what they could do and what they couldn't do, it's going to bring some creativity to the process more so. The feasibility of how much we're going to incur or to be able to consider 20% reductions to departments may not be terribly often, far and few between type of a thing, but to understand what potentials are there, I don't think we'd probably know unless we asked.
Okay, other committee members, thoughts on that? Idea that's in our draft strategic plan?
Oh, I support it.
Okay, Supervisor Cooey
So, Mr.
supports
Chair?
it? Yep, go ahead, Supervisor
I,
Luck.
I do think that it's an interesting and important question. The only concern I have is creating busy work, like making them have to calculate even more numbers for a scenario that's very unlikely to happen at this point. With our strategic plan not finalized, potentially I could see that it would make more sense to really be able to look clearly at those picture, at that picture next year, and maybe not even during the budget cycle. Maybe that's a question we ask off budget cycle. But I would hate, they're already going to be working really hard to try to make this budget work. So I would hate to make more work for a question that we probably won't.
I'm
Yeah.
fine waiting too. We could wait till it's adopted. Okay,
May be the reality, though. I hate to say this, but 20% may be the reality. Maybe it's not 20, maybe it's 10. It's something.
yeah, go ahead,
Um,
Supervisor
um,
Luck. Yep.
True, but I think we'll capture that in the process we already have set forth, because he's asking, what would you do? You're going to have to, what are you going to eliminate in order to meet your budget, or what would you like to add? So I think we're going to be answering that question, just not with the extreme 20% number.
Do you have thoughts, Mr. Langrick?
I would concur. I don't know how, it would depend on the department, how much time they're going to invest into that. I'd hate to see them invest into it just to be lost production. So I understand that. I think it's something that we can build towards. I think we're going to find more and more of the conversation is going to be not, what would I do with getting 20% more, but more so just what would I do if I got back kind of what to get back to the same type of funding that I had like essentially last year before we do wage increases or before we experience COVID impacts. Part of it, what is going to get incorporated though, in kind of asking that question, it's not going to be necessarily what would I do at 20% more increases to our operational revenues. We do have the question that's going to go out on, and it's out there right now, of what could you do with the American Rescue Plan funds? So some of that conversation is going to happen. It just might not be quite in line with necessarily the operational revenues and operational expenses, but we're going to certainly be touching on some of those aspirations.
Okay, let's go ahead and take a vote on this, unless I get overruled. So the motion before us is to adopt this template for department summary. So all those in favor of the template as it's presented, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, so that motion carries. That gets us done with agenda item number 10. So thank you, Mr. Langrick. And you're up with agenda item number 11, classification, compensation, and staff authorization policy.
Mr. Chair, I have a draft compensation, classification, and authorization plan for review today. This is in regards and following our resolution 2107. We had as our strategic plans, item number 12 was the development of a compensation classification plan. We expounded upon that to include the authorization regarding staff authorization, which was an item that we had addressed several months back. Policy has been drafted for preliminary review and discussion. It is attached in your packet on the website underneath item number 11A. It's anticipated that a recommendation for resolution to the county board perhaps be brought forward in July. The goal of this policy is to increase our transparency in identifying our staffing authorizations by department, our consistency in compensation practices, and to have a more centralized location for non-union compensation policies. Taking a quick peek at the policy, there are some certainly welcoming your feedback on all the sections, but some sections I'd like to give to kind of cue this committee into taking special attention to. is section number 1, compensation philosophy. I'd like you to read through that in between meetings, express your thoughts, opinions, and concerns. This kind of really sets the cornerstone on how we view compensation and what the purpose of it is and what some of our goals are with it. The compensation principles is kind of built off of that on identifying, further how we're going to comply with our compensations. And then we get into the sections of identifying our definitions of relating to our schedules and how folks are placed. We have sections then in regards to reclassifications. The authorization table is incorporated in there, and that's the document that we had drafted and put together for your review several months back. We talk about employee movement, whether it's promotion, lateral transfer, demotion, review and maintenance of the policy, and then several of the addendums that are kind of included as supporting the policy language. So again, Mr. Chair, this is just rolled out to you as this is kind of a draft at it. It has had feedback from the departments, from our folks in administrative office, and looking for your feedback and heavier discussion on it next meeting, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman,
Okay, so all we've got before us today is a motion to accept this for review. So I don't believe we need to, I believe what Mr. Langrick is suggesting here is that we not get into a discussion on specific ideas we have for changes to this, but that we just accept it for review and we make sure we come back at a future meeting with our comments or questions on this. So I'm looking for a motion
Mr.
to
Chairman,
accept it for review.
Mr. Chairman,
So let's see if we get a motion.
I will make that
first.
motion.
Okay, a motion by Luck, a second
as
by
per-
Dentis. Just a second, just hold on. So, Mr. Bell, I just want to note too that Supervisor Cooey left the room. Just so it's noted in the minutes, and we still have a quorum. We can keep doing business here. Mr. Seep, go ahead.
yes, Mr. Chairman, I wanted to make the motion, but I guess I didn't get recognized. What I wanted this motion was that we move this forward to the next meeting for review and discussion, but that's fine.
Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion to accept this for review, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion, I think, well, actually, Mr. Brewer, Mr. Seep, did either of you vote for that one?
Yes, I voted for it.
Okay, are you still there, Mr. Brewer? Oh, there you are. I saw your windows, but your head.
I'm here, I'm here.
Okay, great. Okay, so that motion did carry. That takes us to the finance section. So agenda item number 12, project engineer selection for CDBG close grant program. I think in the interest of keeping things going quickly, if we could just get motions and seconds out there, instead of doing entire presentations, let's see if the committee has questions or comments on any of these. And when the committee stops us, then we'll slow down. But otherwise, if we could maybe not do presentations and just have the motions read out loud, I think that might be most helpful. Mr. Langrick, do you mind doing that?
Sure. Yep, we're looking
next
today
few?
then.
Okay, thank
Looking
you.
today for selection of a project engineer for the Lone Rock Village Center Park CDBG project. Suggestion motion today is going to be motion to approve Ayers Associates Incorporated proposal for project engineering and management of the Lone Rock Village Center Park CDBG project. Final contract to be executed by Administrator Langick or Chairman Bauer. Motion to appear before the county board for final approval on June 15th, 2021. Extensive review put into this project by Economic Development Director Glassbrenner, who followed a contract review process put out through CDBG. I would defer, Mr. Chair, to Director Glassbrenner for questions.
Okay, so looking for a motion to approve Ayers, is that how you say it? Ayers?
Ayers.
Thank you.
I'll make
Ayers.
that motion.
Okay,
I'll make that
motion by Brewer,
I'll second.
second by Luck. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. That motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Glassbrenner, for hanging on the line for that. I assume you're there. Agenda item number 13, heat pumps for the courthouse. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve authorization to use fund number 75, which underneath line 2 has replacement for heat exchangers, estimating 3 units with appropriation of $24,000, I think is what we had on that line, and forward to property committee to recommend resolution to the county board for purchase of 3 heat pumps for the courthouse through Precision Control and Services LLC. The estimated cost of the 3 units is $16,910. So today, looking for your authorization to utilize our short-term borrowing. Thursday, it goes to property committee to approve the purchase and then resolution on the 15th, Mr. Chair.
Okay, looking for a motion to approve authorization of that for those heat exchangers and forward it to the property committee.
So move.
Motion by Seep,
I'll second.
second by Luck. Any discussion?
Did this go out on bids?
Supervisor
Put
Luck's
it on.
question, did this go out to bid?
Or did it
would
need
see-
to go out to bid?
And it would have been a expense cost, so we would have put for Rule 14 at the amount that we're going over, would have needed 3 or solicited 3 vendors. I don't know if I've got, is Supervisor Nelson on?
You mean Randy Nelson?
Yes, yes. Well, if you're still comfortable with moving forward with the appropriation, allow that amount. I'll firm that up with property committee before we move forward with accepting the bid. And still then getting your authorization to use Fund 75 for the units, and we'll tidy up with making sure that we bid it and have a quote to us appropriately.
You got 3 bids. Okay. All right. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 14, Tri-County Airports. You want to take these together or separately? We've got contract for engineering.
Sure.
separate,
There's
together.
we can do them, well, probably 2 different motions just to make sure that we're
Okay, let's do
tracking
the
today.
contract for engineering then
Okay,
first.
First one today is looking for motion to recommend resolution to the county board to affirm contract with Jewel and Associates for the engineering and land acquisition regarding the Tri-County Airport Improvement Project. This comes at a cost of an estimated $120,950. We're looking to utilize American Rescue Plan, donated funds from a local partner, and it would be a shared expense. We would not have that full expense of $120,000. We would be sharing it with Sauk County. Based on the time constraints requiring action prior to the June 15th County Board meeting, the County Administrator has signed into an agreement with Jewel and Associates Engineering with Sauk County based on actions of the Tri-County Airport Commissions. The Tri-County Airport Commission and Commission Chair are in favor of entering into the agreement. Funding is anticipated through the American Rescue Plan, local area partner donation, and then the state and federal funding. So that is our first bit that we're looking for. This gets Jewel in position to do the finalized engineering work for the water removal canal as well as the land acquisition. Mr. Chair.
Move for approval.
I'll
Okay,
second.
Motion by Seep and a second by Luck. Discussion on this? So we would not be using any local property tax levy or sales tax for this?
Hopefully it's not a long answer, but why are we purchasing land acquisition? I thought there was plenty of land there.
In order to run the canal from the airport to Bear Creek and have the federal funds be
I
able to
understand.
apply for it, we have to
I understand.
purchase or do a lease. to
Yeah,
have
I
that
know where
run.
Bear Creek, okay.
And then this wouldn't use property tax levy or sales tax? That's what you're proposing? It would not use those sources?
Correct. I'm looking for funding to use American Rescue Plan funds, to use, what was our other ones here? Donation funds. We do have a local area partner that is contributing, I believe, up to $280,000 plus. And then part of that 120,000 again is going to be shared with Sauk County. Our appropriation, our owner share this year was 2575. I'm still waiting on a proposal ordinance to replace our Tri-County Airport with our 2-county Tri-County Airport language that is hopefully coming sooner than later.
Okay, and then was this bid out according to our county board rules as well?
I don't think services you have to, it's different.
Got it. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. Okay. Any further discussion? This is a motion to recommend a contract with Jewel and Associates for engineering and land acquisition.
Correct.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Mr. Langrick, your second one here is the state aid.
Correct. Our
Read
second
it
one is,
correctly.
yep,
It says petition for state aid. Go ahead.
correct. Yep, looking today for a recommend a resolution of the county board to petition for state aid regarding the Tri-County Airport improvement projects. Through the Department of Transportation, we received proposed resolution language that they need in order for us to formally petition and request state funds to match the federal funds. So the 90% would be coming federal, 5% the state funds, which we'd be asking for. And then the last 5% is our local share that we would be sharing with Sauk County and local area donors. So this would be the formal resolution language then that would go to the county board. Mr. Chair.
Okay, so he's looking for a motion to recommend a resolution to the county board to petition for state aid regarding the airport.
So moved.
I'll
So
second it.
moved.
Motion by Brewer, second by Gentis. Any discussion? All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. That motion carries. That takes us on to agenda item number 15, bank account authority for Clerk Kalish, Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to authorize the addition of Derek Kalish, County Clerk, to the list of authorized representatives of Richland County bank accounts with signature authority, and to remove Victor Vlasic, former County Clerk, from the Richland County accounts. Mr. Chair.
Okay, looking for a motion here.
So moved.
Motion by Luck,
I'll second it.
second by Gentis. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. That motion carries. On to the personnel section, agenda item number 16, resignation of Highway Commissioner, Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today to accept a resignation of Highway Commissioner Roger Pitrick. This is in regards to our language that we still have in the handbook that would say the resignation would be approved by the Finance and Personnel Committee. Background, Commissioner Pitrick will be resigning on his own accord and in good standings with the county. The county administrator will be working with the Highway Committee to appoint interim leadership and begin a recruitment process. Mr. Chair.
Okay, I just first, let's get a motion on the
I will
floor.
make that motion.
Motion by Luck. I will second it, Mr. Bell. So a second by Murphy Lopez. So I just want to say I was really sad to hear this. I think Mr. Petrick has done a really good job. He's been very easy to work with. I think he's accomplished a lot in his short time here at the county. I'm sad to see him going, but I understand as well. So that's all I want to say. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to accept his resignation, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. Agenda item number 17, memorandum of understanding with the clerk. Mr. Langrick.
Mr. Chair, looking today for a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding for additional clerk duties through the 2021-2024 term and to recommend the MOU to the Richland County Board for adoption. Background on this is the attached MOU and the finance officer job description are brought forward in meeting the following requirements of the Resolution 2157, where you'll see in that Resolution 2157, we identified the additional $15,000 that historically had been there for administrator coordinator duties, and then requesting that the clerk for the remainder of the term pick up additional types of extra administrative type duties, and that the approval for the county board would first be reviewed by the Finance and Personnel Committee, which is why it's coming to your folks today. And I can pull up on the screen then what we're looking at. Looking for your consideration on an MOU that defines the scope and term under Resolution 2157, which we had mentioned about. These are the different things that we're looking for Clerk Kalish to pick up on. The duties and goals that we would be asking for is number 3, duties, responsibilities, and authorities defined through the financial officer job description, which we'll review next. Assistant with strategic goals of Resolution 2107. Goals number 3 and number 7, making the resolutions and ordinances available and organized on the internet, which I know is a big deal, in which I also believe that Chair Murphy Lopez is going to have his rules and resolutions do a review on Thursday. And then goal number 7, develop finance and purchasing policy. Increased admin authority on purchasing is another aspect of strategic plans we're hoping to have Clerk Kalish assist on. Begin preliminary assessment of possible next generation finance and payroll systems, essentially reviewing a possible replacement for the AS400 system. Legal recognition, this section kind of goes to the extent that Clerk Kalish is doing this of kind of his own discretion. Any types of performance issues that are result of the additional financial officer duties are not of for cause for dismissal based on 5923 for his appointment or his election or an appointment as or his appointment as an elected office underneath 5923. The position description then is a position description that's viewed as a second hat as a finance officer. This is considered a part-time position. It includes languages that you would see in many other counties, financial officer position descriptions, as well as controller position descriptions, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so here we're looking for a motion to approve this MOU and forward it to the Richland County Board for adoption.
So moved.
Motion by Luck,
I'll second it.
Second.
second by Gentis. Discussion?
Just as a clarification, I know that, but this was created with Clerk Kalish's input and
Yes.
approval.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
That is a very good question. Thank
Yeah.
you.
I just want to say I was really impressed with how quickly you guys, that Mr. Langrick, you and Mr. Clerk Kalish developed this. I think it's very clear, and I really appreciate the detail you put into it. If for some reason we decided as a county board that we wanted to hire a full-time finance officer, I'm assuming that portion of the MOU would just kind of be set aside. Is that correct? This doesn't prevent us from doing that if we decided as a
That's-
county board that we wanted to do that.
That's the intentions, is to kind of house those functions underneath the position description so you can view them as that. And when we reach the end of the term in which Clerk Kalish is receiving funds for doing those extra duties, we'll have a decision point then on, are those duties going to go to another person, or how are we going to potentially kind of fill that void? Who's going to be picking up on those duties?
Okay. All right. Anyone else? Okay, all those in favor of the motion to approve this MOU, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, that motion carries. That takes us to agenda item number 18, future agenda items. Let's see, we'll start on the phone. Mr. Seep, do you have any?
Well, Mr. Cooey hasn't fulfilled his commitment to us, but at the Phoenix, but that's all I have.
Okay, Mr. Brewer,
None.
Ms. Luck?
I think we maybe need to talk about per diems as far as, I think it's fairly random, like who's submitting and who's not and how they're getting done. So I'm not quite sure, like this meeting, I've been submitting them on my own, so I don't have a problem, but I think other board members, so maybe we should just have a discussion on who exactly, I think we assume other people are doing it for us and it's not true. We should be doing it ourselves. And so
Okay.
we need to
Oh.
have some instruction.
No wonder my check is so small.
Okay, anything else, Supervisor Luck? Supervisor Gentis?
No, I'm just so pleased we're moving forward with the broadband.
Okay, and then one of them that is now on the top of my mind after going through this agenda today, or through this meeting, is I'm going to research. I know some other committees and different government agencies do a consent agenda. And I've been telling myself I'm going to look into that and understand better what it means and bring it back to you guys. So anyway, that's one of my future ideas. So that takes us to agenda item number 19, closed
Mhm.
session pursuant to Wisconsin State Statute 19.85, Section C, considering employment, promotion, compensation, or performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. And this is regarding corporation counsel. So I'm looking for a motion to go into closed session for that reason.
I'll move to
Motion.
go in closed session.
Okay, we got a motion by Gentis and Brewer. We'll do a second by you.
Yes.
All those in favor of going into closed session, please say aye.
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 Hi, our IT person is waiting.
You have a problem.
I haven't cleared the floor yet. I need to get a vote first. So I'm voting in favor. Supervisor Brewer, I didn't hear you. Did you vote in favor?
Yes. Aye.
Okay, so we have a unanimous vote to go into closed session. So now we will work on clearing the floor.
Pause.
I think we can all hear each other. The meeting's recording again. So we're at agenda item number 21, possible action on closed session. And I don't believe we have any motions that are going to be made. I'll pause for just a few seconds though. And then that takes us to agenda item number 22, which is adjournment. And I know that Mr. Langrek would like to suggest an adjournment date that is other than our normal schedule of the third Friday of June, because last time we had an open session, a closed session with the Sheriff's Deputies Union. They had to sit around waiting for us quite a while, and we thought that a better way of doing it, when he and I talked, and I think we heard this sentiment from a few other people, would be to have a special meeting of the Finance and Personnel Committee to go into closed session right away and pretty much to be done. So I think just focusing on the closed session for the union negotiation. So have you got a date or dates you'd like to propose to us?
I do. From the dates of trying to make the many schedules line up between Attorney Anderson and then all the members of the WPPA negotiation team, we arrived at June 15th, which is County Board Day at 1:30.
Okay, so we'll just give folks a few seconds to
Works for me.
examine their calendars.
I'm good.
Supervisor Brewer? Does that work for you?
It works
You
for
might-
me, yes.
Okay, great. And then Supervisor Gentis, does it work for you?
Yes.
Okay, so it works for 5 out of 7, because it works for me as well. So it works for 5 out of 7 folks. So I'm looking, well, first I just want to say thank you to everyone for attending today and participating. And thank you to Mr. Langrek, especially for all the work that you do to get prepared for these meetings. And thank you to any other staff as well. I know Ms. Scott is here with us from MIS, and the MIS department does a lot of work to make sure these meetings work for us, to include people remotely. Thanks to Mr. Bell for taking minutes. So really appreciate everyone's work, and I'm looking for a motion to adjourn to Tuesday, June 15th at 1:30 p.m. in the county boardroom.
So moved.
Motion by Brewer,
Second.
second by Luck. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 All right, that carries. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
This meeting was very edifying.
Good. Like to hear that.